Hi, I'm Lisa Singer. I am the Senior Director of Event Programming at MediaPost, and this is Brand Insider BTS, where I get to pull back the curtain on some of the most influential women marketers today. And with me is Chelsea Jenkins. She is the Director of Cultural and Inclusive Marketing at Kellogg. Hey, welcome, Chelsea.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Yeah, no, I always ask people to suggest, any recommendations, and you came highly recommended by Stacy at Kimberly Clark. So
Oh
she,
my gosh, that is so kind. Thanks, Stacy.
yeah, no, she is. So anyway, I
Yes.
always, appreciate that. And especially when people are raving and saying she's awesome. And then of course do my snooping and I'm like, yep, she is awesome. So let's get this happening. So,
So kind. Thank you. Oh my gosh, you're just gassing me up. Thank you.
okay. Then I can just go right in to the jugular, right? That's the plan.
Very sweet. Thank
So,
you.
yeah. Well, and I have, as I said, I snoop. And I did notice, and this everyone knows that it didn't really require much snooping, is Lizzo's recent video. He gives a shout out to Kellogg. It's her special music video. And it's basically, the song is all about sort of encouraging people to celebrate themselves each day, start each day to make them feel special. So, and you can't say you eat Special K, but what do you do every day to start your day to make yourself feel a little special?
Oh my gosh. I love that because I do feel that how you start your day really sets the tone for the rest of your day. So I'm not perfect. I try to be as consistent as I can, but when I wake up, I try to start with breath work in the morning and then do like a 10 to 15-minute meditation to just like kind of come back to myself, kind of ground and visualize how I want the day to go. And then while I'm getting ready, I like to do I am affirmations. So I have some that I've written out for myself for 2023. And then honestly, sometimes I'll go to Spotify and they'll have different I am affirmation playlists. It's a great way to start the day. But I loved um, following Lizzo's career and just seeing her recently at the Oscars and just everything that she stands for in empowering marginalized groups and just empowering people to love themselves. And regardless of your race or sexuality or body diversity, through her music and her platform, she's really promoted that. So aligning that mentality that she has and that activism with the brand of food freedom is really what Special K stands for, was a natural alignment. But I just love what she stands for 100%.
Yeah. No, I agree too. And I love that you do the affirmations. And I'm curious, okay, because I've tried meditation and I've, to be honest, I'm like something pops in my head and I'm very good at it. Even when I'm walking, like I do my walk and I'm just like, don't think of anything. And I'll be like, I'll do or whatever, like I've all the little things. But an affirmation, is that something where you keep repeating it? And like, give me a couple that are your go-tos or that more recent ones that you've used. You said you have for 2023 and like one or two, and then is it something you repetitively say to yourself, or do you just kind of look in the mirror and say it? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, sometimes I'll look in the mirror. So while I'm like getting ready, I'll look in the mirror and just look myself in the eye and kind of make that connection and do the affirmations. But even if I just say it once that day and kind of go through the list, so I might say, like, I am powerful, I am strong, I am articulate. Like, if I know that day I have a presentation or something, like I am communicating from my heart and my mind clearly. Um, Anything like that I feel will align with what I'm doing that day, or even like, I am a tool to be leveraged for the highest good of all, like something like that, that just really helps me focus on what's important, but it helps me uplift and tap into my personal power and remind myself who I am at the same time. Like, you are exactly what you say you are.
Yeah.
So if I start the day that way, I see it really come to fruition throughout the rest of the day. So
Yeah, and it totally makes sense. Just because, I mean, even when you think about if you have to, have a conversation with someone, you usually write it out or put, somehow say it, practice it, because then it makes it happen and it makes it easier. So it would apply to the same thing. This is what your day plan for the day is, or for the week, or whatever it is, just life in general. And by hearing it said out loud, kind of, it's almost like even if you're not ready to say it out loud and you don't, you're afraid to, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, it makes it real, you know?
It does. It does. Our words are so powerful. So I try to be very careful about how I talk about myself in that internal dialogue, because you have that choice of being, critical, or am I going to uplift myself, because you, again, are exactly what you say you are. So just being really intentional about the words that you use, because they have power.
Yeah. No, and I think especially women can be more hypercritical of themselves sometimes.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's almost, I know for me, I almost want to beat the person to the punch. You know what I mean? Like, so if I'm feeling insecure about something, I want to sort of draw attention to that. So then you're not telling me, does that make sense? And so I feel like women do that. And where is that going to put us? Like, it's making someone notice our, something that is more negative or whatever, a weakness, but maybe it's not even a weakness. It's just our own inner insecurities. So
100%. I know we can be our harshest critics sometimes, absolutely. And I do have a bit of like a perfectionist gene when it comes to work, and like, wanting to show up a certain way. So there was a time where I would just be like, oh gosh, I should have said this, or, I would over prepare, or like put, this unsurmountable amount of pressure on myself. But at the end of the day, it's like, you put it in context, and you put your best foot forward, and just know that you are enough, and you showed up exactly how you needed to in that moment. And I just let it go.
yeah.
Started being able to just let those things go and not need to be perfect.
No,
So
I completely agree. And I have that perfection gene myself. So it's like, yeah, if something, it's almost like if I can't do it perfectly, then I'm not going to do it. And that's totally ridiculous. But well, I want to talk about your career. Well, first of all, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the director of cultural and inclusive marketing. And I'm curious about when you were first graduating, when you first starting your career, did you envision that for yourself, that kind of, goal in terms of what your career would look like? Or did it evolve as you saw the need for it? Or, how did it all come about?
yeah, absolutely. It was a journey, because I think the underlying lining premise was that I always wanted to help people. Like since I was little, I just was like, I want to be able to help others. And so I went into college pre-med, actually. And then I started visualizing myself in the future, and I was like, it's funny, I don't picture myself in scrubs. Like I picture myself, not that there's anything, like scrubs are great, but like for some reason I couldn't picture it. And then I started shifting, like, what are other ways that I could help people, and just align my natural skills and abilities and interests. And so actually it transitioned over to communications. So in talking about your background of broadcast journalism, that was like really my passion. So I went to Michigan for communications and English. And so when I graduated, I actually wanted to be a reporter, and I was like creating reels and sending them out to all of the stations. And I did work at Fox for a little bit in Detroit in their health department, which was an amazing experience. But it was always that underlining, like, what can I do to kind of help others, whether it's communicating about a certain brand or mission or cause, or something that allows others to kind of be their best self. And so waited for a while and just explored different news outlets. And while I was applying, I started with a startup in Ann Arbor. Just there's so many startups there, and so I ended up actually in tech coming out of
Oh,
college, which was a complete pivot. But I looked at communications a little bit differently. I was like, okay, I can be the voice of this company and this brand from the inside out. And very different than broadcasting, but a lot of the same things that I learned, principles, practices, were able to be applied there in like video creation and messaging and telling stories. So yeah, this was not what I envisioned coming out of college, but it was just an incredible progression. And I've been really blessed to just have diverse experiences. I've had different industries that I've been able to tap into across, as I mentioned, tech, now CPG, but the media piece. I mean, I've been able to really see the world, and end up in some cool environments. But in navigating those different industries, definitely learning the challenges and the hard truths as well of what it's like to be able to progress as a young Black woman in those different spaces. But all of which have kind of landed me where I am today, which has been incredible. I mean, just thinking back on it, I've been able to go to like Quantico and work at the FBI, and in past lives, like go to different at Yale. I was teaching with some of just the most incredible instructors and HBCUs, and so yeah, I've just been able to travel the world on this medium of communications. So.
That's amazing. And I have to, back up with, as you said, being a woman of color, first of all, in CPG, women, it's only been recently that we're seeing a lot of more women in higher positions, and
Mhm.
even just doing our summits, we've seen that change in the last 3 or 4 years, where it used to be very male dominated in terms of who was speaking, because that's where the level was. And I've spoken with some women who are older than you, who have experienced it more so, especially when it comes to that. But even as you come into any type of, whether it be CPG or any industry, do
Mhm.
you feel like, talk to women who are just starting out, and do you take it head on? Do you feel like you have to like play nice until you can get to that like, how do you maneuver that kind of, because it now, I like to, I mean, not, I don't like to, but I think it's more subtle now, as opposed to maybe 10 years or more ago, it was a little
Mhm.
bit more blunt in your face. But even those subtleties, how do you kind of navigate them? And what advice would you give, or what do you even do if you face it today?
Right. The subtleties and the in some cases systemic practices that are in place to kind of keep things the way that they are, or the status quo. I would say take it head on. Honestly, like it's funny, and it being Black History Month too. I'm just thinking about John Lewis, and for some reason, necessary trouble. His his mantra has been on my mind because I think it's just using your voice and speaking up. Like when you see things that aren't right, um, when you know that there's something that you're deserving of, especially being a Black woman, I do feel at times that it's one on behalf of many. Like you might be the only one in a particular room that you're speaking on the behalf of many, and you're looking to bring many along with you and create opportunities and open doors. So whether that's having a conversation to address certain biases, and I think you do it in an empathetic and compassionate way, but also a firm way, because you know that things have to change. And your life, the lives of your kids and generations that follow, depend on you speaking up. So there's nothing wrong with causing a bit of healthy tension, and just using your voice to speak on exactly what you deserve. And I say that I'm blessed in my career because I was able to learn that relatively early. Because I think for a while I played nice. As you said, you just kind of play nice to a certain extent. So I think I played nice and was just like, oh, well, maybe they know something I don't, or, I'm sure it'll come eventually. And then I was like, actually, no, this doesn't seem equitable. This doesn't seem fair. And just bringing attention to it and speaking about it, I started seeing things start to change. Because I think there's sometimes an expectation of, oh, they're maybe not going to say anything. In some cases, that person might not be aware of their biases. So just speaking on it, in my experience, does start to create change, and just making sure that you have those allies. I mean, allyship is critical as well. Connecting with those that are in those traditional positions of privilege to make sure that in the rooms that they're in and conversations they're privy to, they're also speaking on the behalf of you and many. So now, looking at the marketing industry, there's been a huge shift since 2020. I mean, multicultural marketing has been a thing for a long time, but there's more focus and intentionality around it, both because it's the right thing to do, in addressing some of the inequities and addressing the fact that we are now a majority minority nation and we need to be speaking to all audiences, and all audiences deserve to be able to see themselves and be seen authentically, as you know, from our position and responsibility as marketers. So it's good and it's right. But our industry right now, it's like, I think A&A AIM, they just came out with a study that it was like 7.2% of the marketing industry was Black employees. And that's, relative to 12% of the US population being Black. And we want the population to be reflected in the talent that we have on the teams that are putting out the work. And the same thing for Hispanics. I think it was about 10% make up the marketing industry workforce, where they're 18% of the US population. So we want to continue to work to make sure that we have that representation and equity both in the rooms that are creating the work and on the screen. We have that representation. So
Yeah, and I mean, who better to do it authentically than people who that's their life, that's who their experiences are. Then otherwise, and we've seen it in the past where, okay, let's just throw up all these different color faces, and then we're multicultural. And obviously, it's not that simple. There's the culture involved, there's language involved. I mean, all the different aspects that you have to take into it, and you need to hear from people who are experiencing it themselves. And so, especially when you're talking marketing and advertising agencies, they're the ones representing, helping the brands represent their product. And if you're going to do it in an authentic way, you need to hear it from, all the different voices, not just one who thinks they know what their voice would be. So,
right,
yeah.
right, 100%. It's like building cultural intelligence, I think, of just, do we have an understanding of these different groups of people and their values and norms and attitudes, and the little cues that when they see our work, they're like, oh gosh, they get me, like they know what it's like a day in my life. And so that requires the work and the intelligence and insights to get there. But I often ask myself, as a marketer coming out of 2020 and looking at social impact and the responsibility that we have of, is it just that we don't perpetuate stereotypes, or do we have a responsibility to truly combat them? And I think that that's a balance that a lot of brands are looking at right now of how they show up in the world, because you want to be there authentically for these groups. And that means being there for the moments that matter.
So you just want to just be like you're just kind of going with the cause for the day, it needs to.
Right.
So that's why with some brands, like that's where it's kind of a line where I'm curious where you stand on it, in the sense of, okay, yes, these are these inequities. We need to be, we believe in supporting people who don't have their own voice. But at the same point, how much are they going to go against their brand and who they are? And where do they meet? You know what I mean? Like, you can't just dive into it. They're like, you're not a Nike, like some brands, it depends. And even Kellogg is a more legacy brand, and they have to take it slowly. It's not to say you don't do it, but there's certain levels, I guess. And so
Yes.
how do brands, how do you feel like they should maneuver that kind of situation?
I totally agree. And internally, we have to do some audits and self-assessment as well, of just like, do we have a right to show up in this space? Like, where are our receipts of historically where we've been for this community, and where do we start? And so the intention is there. And so I think what we focus on is, for the community, by the community. So if we are going to do something, it's not just like, this is Kellogg's brand and this is what we're doing. It's more like, okay, these are the voices that really need to be uplifted. This is their mission, and put them at the forefront. So if we're partnering with nonprofits and it's a change that we're trying to drive, just like putting them at the forefront, at the heart of what we're doing, instead of making it, all about Kellogg's and all about us. So I think that attributes to the authenticity piece, but absolutely, it's the principles of, where do we actually have a right to show up, and how do we start? And that comes from listening to the communities themselves of what they need. and what they're looking for from us. And then we continue to build equity from there, but it takes time.
You start, slow or whatever level you're at, and then move forward from that. Yeah, that's definitely great advice. Well, we need to have a little fun I like to have a little fun. And so what is your guilty pleasure? I want to know what, maybe you do, don't tell anyone about it, or only a few know, like what's that you need to do and you don't necessarily admit to it.
Oh gosh. I mean, oh man. Uh, Honestly, food is like my guilty pleasure, I guess. Like I am such a food. I love to eat. I do. So I have a few favorite spots in Chicago, but I have like a ritual almost where I have this like pizza that I order every week. Oh my gosh. And like a side of this pasta. It's so good. And that it makes me so happy. And then
So pizza and the pasta
and the pasta.
together.
Just double down, double down.
That's the low carb diet.
Double down on the carbs. Yeah, that's probably my guilty pleasure, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I love carbs. Like that's the thing. It's just like all like those kind of foods, I guess they're, the comfort foods kind of thing. So you just, when you have a long day or whatever, yeah, I'll join you for the pizza and pasta. I'm down for that. So what about, has it been maybe the most recent spur of the moment buy? Like what's something that the best one that you have had recently, or
Oh my
on the
gosh.
recent side of things, but it's very spur of the moment.
Spur of the moment. It's mostly trips. Like all of a sudden I'll just be on like Google Flights and I'll see something on the Explore page and I'll just like go for it. I'll check my schedule really quickly and then just be off in like a day's notice. So I definitely, if I feel moved, will book a flight. And then I would say my biggest kind of spur of the moment change was moving to Chicago. Like I'm originally from Michigan, and I all of a sudden was like, I gotta move. And then like 2 days later had packed up my stuff and like got a sublet in Chicago. Like my parents were like, wait, whoa, when
Their
did all
job
this
offer, or like what was there a person there, a job? Like what made you pick Chicago?
it was the job. I was looking for more energy. Just I was living kind of a little bit outside of Detroit, and I was like, gosh, I want like a little bit more energy in the city, people moving around and hustling. And then I knew that there would be certain job opportunities in Chicago that I was drawn to, and it was RX Bar. That was located here, and that's how I got involved with Kellogg's, was RX Bar. So it was just like, let's give it a shot, and just packed everything up so fast.
That's great. It's funny. I did the same with New York, and like I was just out of college, and doing the job scene in Boston. I'm from Boston, and I even had a job, and I was just like, I don't want to be here. Like I literally it was like midnight. I'm lying in bed. I called one of my friends in New York. I'm like, do you know anyone who needs a roommate? And she's like, actually, I do. I'm like, okay, tell her I'll move in. And like, I like moved in a week or something just to go. And but the energy was just, electric for me. Like to me, it was just amazing, that feeling. So, but yeah, so
Isn't it funny how it hits you like that? And you're just like, gotta go. Gotta go.
That is so funny. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting to know you. We all are. But what is there something maybe that people get wrong about you when they meet you? What did they maybe assume you're one way or another, and it's just completely wrong?
Yeah. So sometimes people will meet me and they'll think like I'm a little standoffish or a little like stuck up. And I've heard this since like high school. And then people get to know me and they're like, "Oh my God, when I first met you, I had no idea," because I'm actually like a very goofy person and a very friendly person, but I'm not always like the one to go up to you and speak. Like, but if you come over and speak, you'll think basically we've known each other our whole lives. So sometimes they'll think I'm a little bit standoffish, but then they get to know me and they're like, oh, she's actually really, really friendly. And then I think just there is sometimes an assumption like, oh, she's a little bit younger. Is she like a bit of a pushover? And then they learn very quickly, like, I'm nice, but I will.
It comes down to it.
When it comes down to it, yeah, I will let you know what's up.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the best way to be. And actually it takes them by surprise, so if they're not expecting it, then you can have your way a little bit more so maybe. You're not ready for a knife fight.
Like a Sour Patch Kid or something.
Definitely.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Okay, so when have you had to use that, you know, in you? Like what's the biggest challenge? Like maybe have you had an obstacle in your career that might have even been defeating to you initially, like something that you just didn't think you could get past, but then you did. And how did you do that? And then where were you, what did you learn from that?
Yeah. Um, yeah, it probably goes back to what I was talking about earlier about like, this doesn't really seem equitable. And, I probably at that time was known as more so just like, oh, she's nice. Like, she's not going to say anything, or like, she's not going to push back on this. And then, yeah, and then they saw another side of me where I was like, no, this is down to business. Like, when it comes to justice, like when it comes to things that are fair or not fair, that's what really unleashes that part of me of like, no, 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 we have to do what's right. Um, and so it's funny, like my dad and I, we have a name for it called the Ginsu, where basically like if you say something, like it's so sharp and like it's so just like deep that it's like you don't even realize you've been cut until you're like walking home and you're like, oh shoot, she did say that. Oh, that's what she meant. Like it's not like coming at you with a dull, like, no tact, I would say, but it's just like direct, but it's deep. It's like, okay, wow, that was a refined cut.
A real knife fight.
The Ginsu. So yeah, so I think in that situation, I just was like, okay, this is what's fair. I would like equitable pay. I would like equitable opportunity for advancement and to see what a clear line of upward mobility looks like at this company. That was not before then an option for me. So yeah, and it worked.
Yeah, you just
Worked.
knew that you could only take it so far, and then it's just, okay, now you need to take that chance and step up for yourself, because if you don't, who else is going to?
Right. And it's always sticking to the facts. Like it's just me delivering hard facts right now, but this is what's fair. This is what the facts say. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to leave and know your worth at the same time. So yeah, it worked out.
No, I think that's great. When you realize that moment, when you see the Ginsu, do you like what? Because I know there have been times when I wish I said something, and then that's all. It just stays in your head. You want to go back, and you never have that moment again. You replay it a lot, but you never have that moment of defending yourself or speaking back about something. How do you? So do you keep replaying it and then go back with with a more prepared thoughts, or do you put that past because you lost that moment? Like, how do you figure that out in terms of what you?
Yep, that's a great question. So in that moment, so I typically try to prepare ahead of time and I'll meditate on it, and try to come into the conversation balanced. So it's not me leading with emotion as much. And it's more so grounding in, again, like this is what's right. And so I have like my notepad on my phone and things will just come to me while I'm meditating. And honestly, I'll just take notes. And so it's in there. And then I think when I enter the conversation, I try to take a breath and like make sure that I'm really present in my body with how I'm feeling and just aligning my heart, my body, and what I'm able to communicate at that time. So it really comes through from authentic place, and I'm just speaking from the heart.
Mhm.
But I do try to think ahead of time, like what is going to help me create the most change? Like oftentimes it's asking questions, and making people reflect and think about the situation in a different way. And so, yeah, I'll meditate on it for sure. And then just try to ground and prepare myself for what could be a potentially tough conversation.
Yeah. No, I love that you say you ask questions, because I do feel like we go in there with certain ideas, or what we think someone's thinking, what they're feeling, and we don't really know. And so sometimes just by asking them what they're thinking, what they're looking for, then it can help you more express your own feelings.
100%, 100%. And then oftentimes when you ask the right question the right way, right? Like they can find the answer without you telling them.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. And it comes through in a way that they can understand instead of me sitting there and telling them, this is what you should have done or this is what needs to happen. Just asking those questions and having them reflect. But yeah, that's the Ginsu.
I love that. Again, Sue. That is awesome. Well, all right. I have one more question before I let you go. I love to ask this. It's just your mindset. But if you could live in any time period, what era would it be?
Mm, um, probably now.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably now, honestly. It's a very unique time just with, you know, technology and just the way people are waking up and thinking for themselves and asking questions, and they're able to do their own research and draw their own conclusions, and in a deeper way. But it's a different way of connecting. But if we leverage, some of these mediums the right way, it's a deeper way of connecting. um so yeah, I would choose now. There's so much opportunity, and I think we're positioned in a good place to really achieve the equity and the justice that, I think that we're capable of as such a young nation. We obviously have some ways to go and grow, but I think we're better positioned than ever to get there, and we have the right people
Yeah.
here.
And
So.
I want to ask though, 'cause we've been in this spot. I don't know quite much. I don't think, where it's been so unified, but we've had certain situations where, okay, things are going to be better now. Things we're going to see more,
Mhm,
and then
mhm,
it fades, and then it resurfaces again, and
mhm.
that's been something that's been ebbs and flows throughout for years. Why does this seem different right now?
I honestly think it's because so many people are awakened to their own power, and their own worth, and they're not listening to external voices or forces that are telling you this is the narrative that you should be or you should follow. They're really doing self discovery. And in that, you're questioning who is determining these realities, who's holding the reins and in the positions of power that are either maintaining oppression or maintaining lack of progress, and who is that really serving. So I think people are just asking more questions, and it takes time to yield change. But I think with the masses kind of being more aware and asking questions and being more involved in determining who the people are that are dictating a lot of what happens in our society and how it's run. That's how we're really going to see change. It does feel more unified than ever. Like we are more like than we realize, right? Like we have more things the same than we do different. And we're starting to celebrate that. And then I think just inherently we're becoming a more diverse nation in what I mentioned earlier of being majority minorities. So in that, um, there's a level of empathy and understanding of those that are different than us too. So I don't know. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, and let's hope we play this just a few years from now and it's
I hope so.
the future was right, Chelsea. You you nailed it on the wall.
I
That's
know.
we're
I
gonna
know.
revisit this. Make sure we're moving forward and we continue to. Well, Chelsea,
Manifesting it. Yeah.
yes, definitely. And yes, we're saying it out loud. So see, it all comes back. It all comes back.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. Chelsea, you are so awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
I'm glad. And thank you for watching. As I always say, Chelsea was an awesome recommendation. I welcome yours. If there's any impressive brand marketer that you want me to talk to and pull the curtains back, please let me know and I will do my best. Thanks again for watching and thanks again, Chelsea.
Thanks.